The night was cold and heavy over the scrapyard. A pale moon hung above, shining weak silver light over broken metal and old machines. The place was full of dead ships, rusted engines, and broken parts. No one came here unless they wanted something cheap, or unless they wanted something to disappear. In the middle of this silent graveyard, under a pile of twisted metal, a faint light blinked. It was not from a machine. It was from a pair of alien eyes. Glowing softly in the dark, the alien woman lay still, her body almost hidden under the wreckage. Her skin had a strange pale blue glow, and faint patterns ran across her arms like lines of light. Her legs did not move. Her breathing was slow and weak. She had been here for many days, but the scrapyard did not care. The wind blew dust across her face, and small metal scraps tapped softly against the junk piles. Her name was Celira, though no one here knew it. Once she had a home, a family, and a place of respect, but those things had been taken from her. The last memory she had of her family was their voices, cold and final. Leave her. She is useless now. The words burned in her mind like fire. She had not begged them. She had not cried. She had only watched as they turned and left, their shadows disappearing into the night. Now she lay here, in the same spot they had abandoned. Her arms were scraped and cut from trying to pull herself out, but she had no strength left. Her lower body did not respond. She could feel hunger gnawing at her. The machines around her were silent, but sometimes, in the distance, she heard footsteps. Scavengers came and went, never noticing her, or perhaps pretending not to see. After all, who would want to help a dying alien in a scrapyard? Above her, the moonlight caught on sharp pieces of metal. They gleamed like teeth in the dark. The air smelled of oil, rust, and something old, the smell of forgotten things. She could not see far, but she could hear the scrapyard breathing. It groaned when the wind pushed against the stacked piles. It rattled when small creatures ran over the junk. It whispered in the quiet, as if the dead machines were talking to each other. Celira closed her eyes for a moment, but her mind was not at rest. She thought of the time before this. She had been strong, her mind sharp, her work important. She was not a warrior, but she had built things that could heal, things that could help, and maybe that had been her mistake. Her people wanted her to build something different, something made for war. When she refused, she became their enemy. And when an enemy is too useful to kill, but too dangerous to keep, they find another way, a way like this, to leave her broken. Silent and forgotten, a sudden sound pulled her from her thoughts. Metal shifted somewhere far away. A slow, careful noise, as if someone was walking. Her heart began to beat faster. She listened, footsteps crunching on the loose metal. Not the quick, careless steps of scavengers. This was slower, more cautious. Whoever it was, they were not here by chance. The sound came closer. A shadow moved between the heaps of broken ships. The moonlight caught on the edge of a metal helmet. Celira's breath caught in her throat. She could not call out. She did not know if this was help or danger. Her mind told her to stay quiet, to wait. But her heart told her that this might be her only chance. The figure stopped, turning there. Head slowly, they were scanning the scrapyard, searching for something. The faint light from Celira's eyes reflected for just a second. The figure froze. For a moment, the scrapyard held its breath. Only the wind moved. Brushing dust across the ground, Celira felt a strange mix of hope and fear. If this was the wrong kind of person, she might not live to see the next moon. But if it was the right one, maybe she would not die here after all. Her lips moved, but the words came out as only a soft whisper. The figure tilted their head, as if they had heard something. Then they began to walk toward her, step by slow step. The sound of metal underfoot echoed in the quiet. Her heart pounded in her chest. Every breath felt like it might be her last or her first chance at life again. The stranger came closer and closer. Their boots stopped just a few feet away. In the dim light, Celera could see the outline of a human face behind the helmet's visor. The human looked down at her, eyes widening slightly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the human took one step closer. And everything in Celera's life was about to change. The human stood in the cold light, his shadow stretching long across the broken ground. He wore a patched jacket, a dented helmet, and a small breathing mask that hissed softly with each breath. His eyes moved over Celera, scanning her broken body, the pale glow of her skin, the way her legs lay still. For a moment, his gaze was cautious, almost calculating. People in the scrapyard learned to trust slowly. If at all, he knelt beside her, his gloved hand brushing away the dust from her face. Still alive, he murmured, almost to himself. Celera blinked slowly, her throat dry, her voice just a whisper. Help. Me. The words were weak, but they were enough to make the man pause. His name was Eli, though she did not know it yet. He was a scavenger, moving from planet to planet, taking what others had thrown away and selling it to survive. He had seen broken machines, dying animals, and even injured people left behind. But this was different. This was deliberate. Someone had left her here, and not by accident. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the shadows of the scrapyard. Who did this to you? He asked quietly. Celera's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Her eyes shifted, as if she was afraid to even name them. Eli could see the fear in her face, and it told him enough. Whoever had done this was still a danger. He reached for the piece of metal pinning her arm and lifted it away. The sound loud in the quiet night. She winced, not from pain, but from the sudden exposure. Her mind raced. Was this man a rescuer, or just another scavenger who would strip her of anything valuable and leave? Eli's voice broke the silence again. Can you move? She shook her head slowly. No, not my legs. Eli cursed under his breath, not in anger at her, but at the situation. A paralyzed alien in a scrapyard was more than just a sad sight. It was a death sentence. The air shifted, carrying a faint metallic echo from somewhere beyond. The walls of scrap. Eli froze, head turning toward the sound. It was the slow crunch of boots on metal, more than one set. The sound of people who knew this place well. Celera's eyes widened, her voice breaking into a shaky whisper. They will kill you. Eli's jaw tightened. He had a choice: walk away now and avoid trouble, or stay and risk everything for a stranger. He thought about the kind of man he had been for the past few years. Someone who looked out only for himself, but something about those faint, glowing eyes made it impossible to leave. Not leaving you, he said, his voice low but firm. Tetsuya pulled a small hand light from his belt and scanned the area around her, searching for a way to move her. She was light. For her size, her alien frame thin but strong in the upper body. Still, carrying her through the scrapyard without being seen would be nearly impossible. The footsteps outside grew louder. Closer. Eli's mind worked fast. He spotted a half-broken hover cart leaning against a wall of scrap. If he could get her onto it, he could push her through the shadows. He slipped the light back onto his belt and slid his arms under her shoulders. She gasped in pain but did not cry out. He lifted slowly, feeling the strange weight of her body to light in some places, too heavy in others. Her skin was cool, almost cold. He carried her the few steps to the cart and lowered her onto it. The sound of voices reached them now, rough and unfriendly. They said she was here. One voice growled, another laughed. If she's still alive, she won't be for long. Eli's heart pounded. Celera's eyes locked on his. The unspoken question clear. Why was he doing this? But there was no time for answers. He crouched low. hands on the cart's side handles, and began to push every small movement made. The cart squeaked softly. He winced at each sound, but the voices were still far enough away. They moved through narrow paths between heaps of scrap. The shadows stretched like black rivers under the moonlight. Once, Eli stopped suddenly, pressing himself and the cart against the side of a broken hull as a beam of light swept past. A scavenger patrol, searching for something or someone. He waited until the beam moved away, then pushed on. Salira stayed silent, watching him with an expression she didn't quite understand. A mix of fear, curiosity, and something else. Eli guided the cart toward a low opening between two stacked piles. On the other side was the path that led out of the scrapyard, but before they could reach it, a shadow stepped into view ahead of them. The figure's eyes glowed red in the dark. Going somewhere? Human. The voice was deep and mocking. Eli stopped, his hand tightening on the cart's grip. Salira's heart thudded in her chest. The stranger's gaze moved from Eli to her, and a slow smile spread across his face. Well, they'll pay. Good credits to know she's still breathing. Eli's mind raced. The narrow path meant there was no easy way around, and now the danger was standing right in front of them. Blocking their only escape, the cold scrapyard air felt heavier than ever, and somewhere, deep inside, Salira knew that whatever happened next would decide whether she lived another night or not at all. The narrow path between the mountains of scrap felt like a cage. Cold moonlight spilled in thin lines from the gaps above. Eli stood frozen, his hands still gripping the hover cart. The man blocking their way stepped closer, his boots scraping against the ground. His red glowing eyes didn't blink. Behind him, shadows moved. More figures were coming. Salira could hear her own heart pounding. Her body was weak, her legs useless, but her mind was sharp. She knew this man, not by name, but by the way he carried himself. He was a hunter, one of those sent to clean up problems for the powerful, and right now, she was the problem. Eli spoke first, his voice steady but low. "I don't want trouble." The hunter's smile widened, showing sharp teeth. "You've already found it. Human," he said, stepping closer. His gaze moved to Salira again. "She's not yours to take." Eli didn't move. Salira's fingers twitched against the edge of the cart. Her voice was a dry whisper. "Eli, don't." It was the first time she'd said his name, though he had never told her. It made him glance down at her in surprise. How did she know who he was? But there was no time to ask. The hunter tilted his head, hearing the faint sound of her voice. "So you can still speak," he said with mock interest. "Good. The bosses like them alive at first." Eli's jaw tightened. He took a small step forward, blocking the hunter's line of sight to her. "You're going to turn around and walk away," Eli said. It wasn't a threat shouted loud. It was a quiet promise. The hunter's laughter echoed in the metal walls of the scrapyard. Behind him, two more shapes appeared, both carrying long, rusted weapons. The path was closing fast. Salira's eyes darted around. Her voice came again. A little stronger this time. "Eli. Left side. Gap." He looked where she was staring, a narrow space between two piles of junk, half blocked by a fallen engine. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. Eli made his move without warning. He shoved the hover cart hard toward the gap. The hunter lunged, grabbing for him, but Eli ducked low and kicked at the engine. It rolled just enough to make space for the cart to slide through. Salira clung to the sides, her glowing eyes fixed on the way ahead. The metal edges scraped the cart, sending sharp screeches into the night. Shouts rang out behind them. "Stop them!" Boots pounded against the scrap. Eli pushed the cart faster, his breath coming in sharp bursts. The gap opened into a wider lane between stacks of old ship parts, but he knew they weren't safe yet. He could hear the hunters splitting up, some circling around to cut them off. Celira's hand reached toward him. Why? Why are you helping me? She asked, her voice breaking. He didn't look at her. His eyes fixed on the dark path ahead. Because you're still alive, he said, simply. And someone decided you shouldn't be. That's reason enough for me. Her throat tightened. For a long time, no one had spoken to her without wanting something in return. It felt strange, almost dangerous to believe he might mean it. They rounded a corner and came face to face with another hunter. This one was taller, bulkier, his red eyes burning in the shadows. He raised his weapon. Eli swore under his breath. Looking for cover, there was nothing but open space for several meters. Then Celira's voice cut through the air, sharp and clear. Sheeran Vex. She shouted in her own language. The hunter froze. Eli didn't know what she'd said, but it worked. The man's hands lowered slightly. Confusion flickering in his eyes. Eli took the chance, ramming the cart into the side of a broken hull. And ducking behind it, metal clanged loudly. Masking their movement as they slipped into another narrow path, they moved quickly. The danger still close. Celira's breath came in shallow gasps, but there was a spark in her eyes now. You spoke. Their language, Eli said. She nodded faintly. Yes. Told him his leader is dead. Eli blinked. Is that true? No, she said softly. But it bought us time. The footsteps behind them grew distant for a moment. Eli slowed, listening. The scrapyard was a maze. If they could stay ahead just long enough, they might make it to the outer gate. He kept pushing, the cart rattling over uneven ground. Celira looked up at the pale moon. Her voice was quieter now. Almost to herself. If we make it out, I will tell you everything. Eli didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the shadows, his hands gripping the cart in the distance. He could see the faint glow of the gate's control panel. They were close, but he knew the hunters wouldn't give up that easily. Somewhere in the dark, he could feel their eyes still watching, still waiting for the right moment to strike. The scrapyard whispered around them, the wind carrying the sound of distant metal groaning. Every noise felt like it could be danger. Every shadow could be a trap, and in the middle of it all, Eli realized that saving Celira was no longer just about helping a stranger. It was about defying whoever thought they had the right to decide who lived and who died. The outer gate was in sight, but the air between Eli and freedom felt heavy with danger. The faint green glow from the control panel seemed close enough to touch, yet far enough for anything to happen before they reached it. The cart's wheels rattled over loose bolts and twisted metal, every sound echoing too loudly in the scrapyard's maze. Celira's eyes kept flicking to the shadows. Her breath slow and shallow. She knew the hunters would not stop. They were trained to track, to wait, and to strike when escape seemed certain. Eli slowed his steps, listening. The wind whistled through the gaps in the scrap piles, but underneath it, another sound grew clearer. The faint crunch of boots. It wasn't behind them now, it was. Ahead, someone had beaten them to the gate. He pushed the cart to the side, ducking behind the jagged remains of a cargo hauler. Stay down, he whispered. Celira didn't argue. Her eyes locked on the open lane toward the exit. A figure stepped into view, tall, armored, holding a weapon that gleamed under the moonlight. The red glow in his eyes cut through the dark like a warning. He was alone, but Eli knew what that meant. The others would be close, waiting for the signal to surround them. The hunter scanned the path, his voice carrying in the still air. You can't hide forever. His tone was calm, almost bored. He tapped the side of his helmet, activating a small device. Celira recognized the faint hum, a tracker. Her pulse quickened. They can smell my energy signature. She whispered, they know I'm here. Eli's jaw tightened. He had to make a choice, run fast and risk being shot. or find a way to distract them, but the open path to the gate was a killing ground. The piles of metal offered cover, but they also trapped them in a maze with no easy escape. The hunter took a slow step forward. From the far side, another shape appeared, and then another within seconds. 3 hunters stood between Eli and freedom, their weapons raised loosely, not in panic, but in quiet confidence. They knew they had the advantage, one of them a smaller figure with a cracked visor. Spoke up. Orders are clear. The alien comes back alive. The human doesn't matter. Celira's heart clenched. She looked at Eli. Her voice urgent but soft. Leave me. You can still make it out. Eli didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said everything. He wasn't leaving. The nearest hunter took another step. Eli raised his hand slightly, as if surrendering. All right, he said, his tone calm, but you'll have to come take her yourself. Before the hunter could react, Eli's hand shot to his belt, pulling out a small round object. It was a scavenger's flare, bright enough to blind in the dark. He slammed it against the ground. A burst of white light exploded, bouncing off the metal walls. The hunters cursed, their visors flashing red as they tried to adjust. Eli didn't waste a second. He shoved the cart hard into the nearest pile of scrap, knocking loose a rain of metal sheets. The crash was deafening, filling the lane with a storm of debris. Celira clung to the cart as Eli pushed it into a narrow side gap he had spotted earlier. The noise behind them grew, shouts, heavy footsteps, the clatter of weapons. They twisted through the gap, the walls so close that the cart scraped on both sides. Eli's shoulder hit a jagged edge, but he didn't slow. The flare's light still flickered behind them, throwing wild shadows. Celira risked a glance back. The hunters were coming again, faster now. They won't stop, she whispered. Eli didn't look at her. Then we don't stop either. The path curved sharply, opening into a wider space filled with old ship engines stacked like towers. The air was warmer here, carrying the faint smell of burning oil. Somewhere nearby, a fire was still smoldering. Eli used it to their advantage, pushing the cart behind one of the taller stacks. They crouched low, hidden for the moment. Celira looked at him, her voice trembling but steady. They want me because I refused to give them what they asked for. What was it? Eli asked, still scanning the shadows. A weapon, she said, her eyes lowering. A weapon that could wipe out a human colony in minutes. Eli's hands tightened on the cart's handle. So they crippled you and threw you away. She nodded. They can't risk my knowledge getting to anyone else. The sound of boots drew closer again. The hunters were spreading out, checking every gap and shadow. Eli's eyes darted upward, spotting a narrow metal beam running between 2 engine stacks. If he could climb up and pull the cart after him, they might be able to cross unseen, but it would be risky. The beam was high and the cart heavy. Celira caught the look in his eyes. You can't carry me that far, she said. I can try, Eli replied. No, she said, her voice sharp. If you die, this ends for both of us. The moment stretched between them, the hunters' voices growing louder. Then Eli made his choice. He gripped the cart and began pushing again, heading toward the far side of the engine yard. Celira didn't argue this time. She simply held on, her glowing eyes fixed ahead. Somewhere beyond this maze of metal, there had to be a way out. But every step they took, every turn they made, felt like moving deeper into the hunter's game. And in the quiet space between heartbeats, Celira realized something. These hunters weren't just here to bring her back. They were here to make sure no one, especially a human, ever learned the truth about what she knew. The air in the engine yard felt tight, like the walls of the scrapyard were pressing in. The glow from the distant gate was gone now, hidden by twisting paths of metal. Eli knew the hunters had cut them off. They were driving him and Celira deeper into the maze, where there were fewer exits. He had seen this kind of tactic before. Close in slowly, corner the prey, and strike when there's nowhere left to run. But Eli wasn't planning to be anyone's prey. He kept pushing the hover cart, weaving through gaps barely wide enough for it to fit. Celira stayed silent, her hands gripping the sides, her glowing eyes scanning for danger. The sound of boots and muffled voices echoed from different directions. The hunters were closing in, up ahead. A low gap between two piles of ship hulls opened into a wider lane. A faint red light glimmered at the far end. Eli stopped for a moment, listening. The red light pulsed, steady, mechanical, not from a hunter's visor, but from a security beacon. Celira's eyes narrowed. That's an access point. Maybe to the outer freight track. Her voice carried a hint of hope. Eli glanced back. How sure are you? Not sure, she admitted, but it's better than staying here. He pushed forward, the cart rattling against bits of loose metal. The lane opened into a long, low tunnel made from the remains of a broken cargo hauler. Its walls were scorched black, and the floor was littered with wires and shattered panels. The beacon light at the end blinked like a slow heartbeat. Halfway through, the tunnel shook slightly. Eli froze. From outside came the deep metallic thud of something heavy landing. A shadow passed across the far end of the tunnel. A hunter. He was moving slowly, his red visor glows spilling faint light over the walls. Eli pulled the cart into a side alcove. Pressing himself and Celira against the cold metal, the hunter's footsteps were slow, patient. He stopped near the alcove. Eli held his breath, his muscles tense. Celira could feel the heat from the hunter's weapon, even without looking. A faint hiss came from the hunter's mask as he adjusted his breathing. Then, from the far side of the tunnel, another voice called. Found something on the east row. The hunter paused, then turned and walked away, his boots echoing until the sound faded. Eli let out a slow breath that was close. He whispered. Celira's gaze stayed fixed on the far end of the tunnel. They're not giving up, she said. Then neither do we. Eli replied, pushing the cart forward again. The tunnel ended in a broken loading dock, open to the night sky. Beyond it, a long, rusted freight track stretched toward the scrapyard wall. Parts of the track were missing, gaps filled with piles of debris. But in the distance, Eli could see the faint shape of an old maintenance gate. If they could reach it, they might slip out without triggering alarms. The ground here was uneven, forcing Eli to slow. Every bump sent a jolt through the cart. Celira clenched her jaw, keeping silent despite the pain. Behind them, the scrapyard groaned under shifting weight. Hunters were climbing the piles to get a better view. The red glow of their visors flashed briefly between the stacks. Eli moved faster, pushing the cart along the side of the track, using the shadows for cover. Then, a shout cut through the night. There, by the freight line. Eli didn't look back. The sound of running boots came from behind. Faster now, the hunters had spotted them. A beam of red light swept across the track, catching the edge of the cart. Eli swore under his breath and pushed harder. The cart rattled over a loose panel and nearly tipped. He caught it just in time, the motion sending a spike of pain through his arms. Faster, Celira urged. I'm trying. Eli shot back. The freight line curved sharply, leading to a pile of old containers stacked like a wall. The maintenance gate was just beyond, its metal frame rusted but intact. Between them and the gate, 3 hunters were already moving into position. They raised their weapons. Aiming low, they wanted her alive. But Eli was another matter. Eli scanned the containers, looking for anything. His eyes landed on a half-broken crane, its hook dangling over the track. An idea hit him fast. Hold on, he told Celira without slowing. He veered the cart under the crane. Grabbing the loose control cable, he yanked hard. The crane's hook swung wide, slamming into the nearest container with a loud crash. The impact toppled the stack, sending metal boxes crashing down. Dust and debris filled the air, blocking the hunter's view. "Go!" Celera shouted. Eli didn't need telling twice. He pushed the cart through the cloud. Weaving between fallen panels, the maintenance gate loomed ahead. Its lock panel was cracked open. Wires exposed. Celera leaned forward. "Stop here," she said quickly. Her fingers moved fast over the wires, twisting and crossing them. Sparks jumped, and the gate's rusty hinges groaned as it slid open just enough for the cart to pass. They slipped through, the hunter's shouts echoing behind them. Once on the other side, Eli shoved the gate closed, jamming a piece of scrap into the mechanism. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would slow them. The night outside the scrapyard was colder, quieter, for the first time since finding her. Eli felt like they had a small lead. Celera looked at him, her voice tired but steady. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said, without hesitation. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to understand why. Finally, she leaned back in the cart, her eyes drifting to the dark horizon. "We're not safe yet," she whispered. Eli nodded, gripping the cart handles. "No, but we're not dead yet either." And with that, they vanished into the shadows beyond the scrapyard, the hunters, voices fading behind them. For now, the escape was real, but the danger was only beginning. The road beyond the scrapyard was not really a road. It was a narrow strip of cracked stone, half buried under sand and dust on either side. Tall metal ruins reached into the night sky like the skeletons of giants. No streetlights, no signs of life, only the distant hum of wind through broken structures. Eli kept pushing the hover cart, his muscles aching from the escape. His breath fogged in the cold air. Celera sat low, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her glowing patterns pulsed faintly, a sign she was exhausted but still alert for a long time. They didn't speak. The only sounds were the squeak of the cart's wheels and the distant, dying echoes of the scrapyard behind them. But even here, Eli knew they weren't safe. The hunters might track them through the night. They needed somewhere to hide up ahead. Eli spotted a half-collapsed building, its walls leaning like it might fall at any moment, but it was enough cover. He steered the cart toward a narrow gap in the wall and slipped inside. The air inside was stale and cold. Shadows stretched long across the floor, broken only by thin lines of moonlight through the cracks. Eli set the cart down gently. "You need rest," he said. Celera's eyes stayed on him, calm but unreadable. "You're still risking your life for me," she said softly. "You don't even know why they want me dead." Eli leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I figured it's about something you know," he said. "But I don't need the details right now." Celera shook her head slowly. "No, you do need to know," she said, her voice firmer, "because after tonight, they will hunt you too." She took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "I was a scientist," she began. "I worked on technology meant to heal our world's machines that could rebuild damaged ecosystems, restore air, even repair broken cities." Her eyes lowered, the glow dimming. "But my work was taken." Twisted Eli listened without interrupting. "They wanted me to create something else, a device that could erase all life on a targeted planet in minutes, turning cities into empty shells." Eli's jaw tightened. "And you refused." "Yes," she said, but refusal meant betrayal in their eyes. Her voice grew quieter. "They didn't kill me because my knowledge was too valuable. So they broke my body, made me useless, and left me to die where no one would find me." The silence that followed was heavy. Eli studied her, trying to imagine the life she'd had before the scrapyard. "You could still build that weapon," he said finally. Celera met his gaze. "Yes, but I never will." That's why they want you, Eli said. That's why they'll keep coming. She nodded. They fear what I know. And they fear who I might give it to. Eli moved to the cracked window, scanning the street outside. You're saying? If you survive, you could help people instead of destroy them. I could help many worlds, she said, her voice low but certain. Even your human colonies. For a moment, Eli said nothing. His mind raced through possibilities. The danger, the pursuit, the fact that he had no real plan, but under it all, one thought held steady. If she was telling the truth, then protecting her wasn't just about saving her life, it was about stopping something far worse. Celira shifted in the cart, wincing slightly. Her voice softened. You didn't have to stop in the scrapyard. You could have walked away. Eli glanced back at her. Maybe I've walked away too many times before. He said, this time felt different. The moment hung in the cold air. Broken by a distant sound, the faint, low hum of engines. Eli's head snapped toward the noise. Celira tensed. They're still searching, she whispered. Eli moved quickly, grabbing a loose piece of metal from the floor and dragging it over the opening in the wall. The sound outside grew louder, then faded. Maybe it was just a patrol passing through, or maybe it was a sign they were running out of time. We can't stay here, Eli said. Do you know anywhere they won't look? Celira hesitated. There is a place, she said finally, a hidden outpost. But it's far, and the path is dangerous. Eli gave a short laugh. Dangerous seems to be the theme tonight. Her eyes locked on his. If we make it there, I can give you something, a map, a design. Something your people can use to protect themselves. Eli nodded slowly. Then that's where we go. Celira studied him for a long moment. You're not afraid of them, are you? Eli gave a faint smile. Oh, I'm afraid, he said. I just don't like being told who I can't save. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying a faint metallic rattle through the empty streets somewhere beyond the ruins. The hunters were still moving, still tracking, but inside the crumbling building, a quiet agreement had been made. Eli wasn't just helping Celira escape anymore. Now, they were both carrying a secret, one that could change the fate of more than one world. The ruins stretched out before them like a dead city. Broken towers leaned against each other as if too tired to stand alone. The wind carried fine dust through the empty streets, whispering through cracks in the metal. Eli pushed the cart steadily, his boots crunching over debris. The night was deep, and the moon hung low, bathing everything in a cold silver light. Celira sat quietly, her glowing patterns faint but steady. Her mind was on the hidden outpost she had told him about. It was far, but if they reached it, there would be safety. Not just for her, but for the knowledge she carried. She could already imagine the data being given to the right people. The weapon plans destroyed forever, but between here and there, danger still walked. Eli knew the hunters wouldn't stop. They had tasted the chase, and now it was about more than orders. It was about pride, about finishing what they started. The ground sloped downward, toward a dark canyon that cut through the ruins. Eli stopped at the edge, scanning the shadows below. The canyon floor was littered with the remains of ships and cargo pods. Far across, a narrow bridge of old metal beams stretched between two cliffs. That's the way, Celira said. Her voice was quiet but certain. It leads to a path the hunters can't follow easily. Eli studied the bridge. It swayed slightly in the wind. The beams rusted and thin. Looks like it could collapse. He said. It won't, Celira replied. It was built for maintenance crews. Before the war, Eli had heard pieces of it in old stories. A war that had left entire planets hollow and silent, and now part of that history was sitting in his cart. Still fighting in her own way, he pushed forward, guiding the cart toward the bridge. The wind grew colder here, sharp against his skin below. The darkness seemed endless. Halfway across, the metal groaned under the weight. Eli kept his eyes forward, refusing to look down. Then a sound split the air. The sharp, heavy thud of boots on metal behind them. He didn't have to turn to know who it was. The hunters had found them again. 3 shapes emerged from the shadows at the canyon's edge, red visors glowing. One of them called out, "Give her to us, human, and we'll let you walk away." Eli didn't slow. Celira's voice was tense. "They'll shoot you before you take 2 steps." "I know," Eli said. The hunters stepped onto the bridge. Their weapons raised. The metal trembled under the combined weight. Eli stopped, turning just enough to face them. "You want her?" He called out, "Come and take her." The hunters advanced, the wind tugging at their cloaks. Eli's mind raced. Fighting here would be suicide. But if he could slow them down, Celira might have a chance. He leaned down to her, speaking low. "When I tell you, grab the rail and hold tight." Her eyes widened. "What are you going to? Just trust me," he cut in. The hunters were halfway across now. Closing in, Eli took 1 step back, then another. The bridge creaked louder. The hunters didn't notice the way his eyes kept flicking to a single, rusted support beam just behind them. When they were close enough, Eli moved. He pulled a small cutting torch from his belt, one of the tools he'd salvaged days ago. In one smooth motion, he lit it and drove the flame against the rusted beam. Sparks flew into the night. The hunter shouted, realizing too late what he was doing. The beam gave a sharp crack, the metal snapping under the strain. "Now?" Eli shouted. Celira gripped the rail with both hands. The bridge buckled, the section behind them tilting sharply downward. The hunters lost their footing. Sliding toward the edge, one managed to grab a rail, but the others fell, their shouts fading into the darkness below. The bridge rocked violently, but the section under Eli and Celira held. Eli shut off the torch, breathing hard. He glanced back. The one remaining hunter was already pulling himself up, his eyes burning with rage. Eli pushed the cart forward with everything he had left. The end of the bridge came into view. Solid ground just steps away. They crossed. The sound of the hunter's boots pounding behind them. Eli grabbed a loose beam from the ground and shoved it against the bridge's edge. The old metal gave way, collapsing the last few meters of the crossing. The hunter stopped short, stranded. On the far side, his voice carried over the gap. "This isn't over, human." Eli didn't answer. He turned and kept moving. The canyon now between them and their pursuer. The path ahead wound upward into the hills at the top. The faint outline of the outpost rose against the horizon. Its shape was small, almost hidden among the rocks. Celira looked at it with something close to relief. "We made it," she said. "Not yet," Eli replied. "But we're close." They reached the entrance, a narrow steel door half covered in sand. Celira guided him to a hidden panel, her fingers moving over the controls. The door slid open with a deep hiss, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, the air was warmer. The walls lined with old machinery and shelves of supplies. Eli pushed her inside. Finally letting himself breathe, Celira looked up at him. "You could have left me so many times," she said. Eli shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "Humans do strange things when they believe something's worth saving." She held his gaze. "Then I hope I can make it worth it." Somewhere outside, far away, the hunters would regroup. The chase wasn't over. But here, for the first time, they had a place to stand, a place to plan. And Eli knew one thing for certain. He had made his decision. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing that sometimes humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength, or speed, or firepower. It was the choice to protect, even when the whole galaxy said not to.